The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government and what we were tasked to do.
In the Idaho Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, we have a right to life, we have a right to defend life.
This legislation is centered on meeting the needs of Idaho families.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
The courts have long held that our ability to transfer title on real property benefits society as a whole.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
I feel like we're back to an unappointed board that gets to decide who is essential and who is non-essential.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
And for me, it's about a couple things. It's about food security, it's about national security, and it's about preserving American exceptionalism.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
All right, we are live January 18, 2024. My name is Matt Edwards. Welcome to Idaho Signal. Thank you for being with us this week. It is Thursday, and yesterday on the program, we went through the bills. The bills, current bills that are before committees and before public consumption. So today, I wanted to take you through the committee process and what happens in the committees, because that is where a lot of the debates happen. It's where a lot of changes happens. It's where public can show up and give their input on these bills. And I think it's pretty important to sometimes, dig into the weeds and look at this process so that you understand what it takes to be familiar with the process. Now, we're going to look at some public comment clips later, but just to set that up for you, when you are ready to give public comment on a bill, you can show up in person, sign up, or you can deliver an email to the committee in written form as an official public comment that will be on record. So we'll get to that process in a second. But yesterday we went through some bills. Most of them were sent through committee, sponsored by a legislator, and there are certain bills that have co-sponsors and will be sent through the other side of the chamber, whether they're in the House going to the Senate or the Senate going to the House, by that respective co-sponsor. So let's get right to it. The first thing I want to present to you is a clip from this week with Senator Scott Herndon in the Senate State Affairs Committee, where he was presenting an RS. So this was his presentation on a particular bill that he was sending to the Senate State Affairs Committee. All right, we'll get it going. Here we go.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Scott Herndon, District 1. It's nice to hear where you all are from. I'm from Boundary, I represent Boundary and Bonner counties. I have the only international border of any of us with Canada. We've got 3,015 square miles in the district. Before you is RS 30902, and this affects campaign finance and it affects our reporting of candidates and political committees in the state of Idaho. When we do our campaign finance reports, currently the sections of code that we're going to impact with this legislation relate to campaign contributions that are aggregated less than $50. And presently in Idaho code, we do not require the candidates or political committees for contributions that aggregate from an individual contributor that are less than $50. We allow those to be reported as unitemized. This legislation will change that, and basically you'll treat all contributions the same regardless of the dollar amount. So you'll go ahead and report to the Secretary of State on your campaign finance report the name of the contributor, the address information of the contributor for all contributions regardless of the dollar amount. Now, this came about because we already have a section in Idaho code. It is 67-6614, which says that we are not to be receiving any anonymous donations, any donations with fictitious names, etc. So I know, for example, on my central committee, we've passed around a hat before where we collect cash donations to pay for the room. Turns out that's not legal in Idaho code. It also comes about because our new campaign finance system is asking us to do something that Idaho code does not require us to do, which is report aggregate donations under $50. And we either tell the Secretary of State that we don't want to do that, or we just go ahead and conform Idaho code. In my view, this is a transparency bill. I know as a candidate, I collect all donor names and addresses, and I report all donations under $50. And that's the change contained in this legislation. Happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Senator Herndon. Are there questions? Senator Anthony.
Mr. Chairman, for motion.
Motion's in order.
I move that we introduce RS 30902.
Motion by Senator Anthony, seconded by Senator Winder, that RS 30902 be introduced. Is there questions? Don't see any. Those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Senator.
Okay, so that bill now has that RS now has a bill number. So that's Senate Bill 1218. So at the time it was just an RS, and now it's Senate Bill 1218. And you saw how Senator Herndon gave a pretty nice, succinct yet detailed explanation of what the bill does, why it's needed, and pointing out some contradictions in Idaho law and how things are managed, and what the understanding is of candidates, of PACs, of committees that do collect money. So that's the bill from Senator Herndon for that particular issue. And so we'll just jump right ahead here. I want to show you another RS introduction. This is from Senator Kevin Cook, I think. And it's an interesting bill. We covered it yesterday, but it has to do with turning on the default setting on tablets and phones that are going to be administered to minors in order to filter out graphic materials and pornography and such. So let's roll this clip. I think it's shorter, so we'll see how this process works.
And we'll start off with Senator Cook presenting RS 30913C1. Welcome, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. This RS is, you heard it a little bit last. Sorry, thank you. Get a little nervous when you get a microphone in front of you. I am Senator Kevin Cook from District 32. I have a bill that was placed before you last year, and we've changed it a little bit. It has an age verification part of it. The gist of the bill basically is if you activate a mobile device within the state of Idaho and it's for a minor, turn on or enable the parental software that is installed on the mobile device, and that's the gist of it.
Sounds like you have erred on the side of being succinct at the print hearing, and we'll see if, and that's always a good side to be on. There are other questions, Senator Winder.
Thank you. If there are no questions, I'd offer a motion.
Motion's in order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move we introduce RS 30913C1.
Motion by Senator Winder, second by Senator Lee, that RS 30913C1 be sent to print. Is there discussion on that motion? Boy, did you get off easy. Those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thanks, Senator. Thank you. It'll be done. Next.
It'll be done. Okay, so that one was a lot shorter, a lot more brief. Not any history on why it's going on or what the current standards are in terms of the damages being done or anything. But the filtering system that is on phones, he wants it to be on by default when giving to children. So that draft legislation will be out there for us to read, and we can go on to the next one. So I think one of the things to point out there, the reason why I wanted to show that clip was the contrast in how a bill is presented at a print hearing. Sometimes it's just as brief as that, even though we may want to hear a little bit more of the details. Usually those details come out in a full hearing, but it remains to be seen if that's how Kevin Cook will present the bill when it comes back for a public hearing in that committee, as opposed to what we saw earlier with Kevin Cook. I want to shift gears now because earlier this week and last week, there was a lot of hubbub about the library bill. That's House Bill 384 to address the graphic and sexual materials that are found on libraries in our public libraries and our public school libraries. And so Representative Jaron Crane has a bill that seeks to address the issue that's going on. Apparently, a senator in District 8, I believe, Senator Jeff Schroeder, is introducing, I don't want to say a competing bill, but another alternative to deal with the school libraries. And he presented that bill in committee, and we're going to play that for you now so we can get a taste of what the idea Senator Schroeder has with his bill.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Senator Jeff Schroeder, Senator for District 8. It is Elmore, Owyhee Valley, and Custer counties. I made the trek here 44 miles through...
Maybe pull that mic a little closer.
Is it on? All right.
It's on, but...
Look at this. That moves. Anyway, after I made the drive, we were talking back there. I decided I'd go ahead and present this. So what this piece of legislation does is this, as we're all aware, we're statewide kind of embroiled in some controversy over materials that are available in public libraries and in school libraries. This piece of legislation attempts to tackle the issue with materials that are available in public school libraries in the state of Idaho. What this does is to help solve some of that controversy by mandating, first of all, a curation and selection policy must be adopted by a school board. And then when there is material that is challenged or potentially harmful, it provides a establishment of a committee to review those materials and a process by which the school arrives at a decision as to whether or not to retain the materials or not. And it mandates that procedure and policy be implemented. And if the library or the school fails to do so, the library will be closed until they do so. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Anthony.
It's for a question first.
That's in order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Schroeder, so I have not read through this in detail, but is what you're telling me that this is intended to address the issues surrounding with pornographic or other inappropriate materials being given to children in public schools?
That is correct. Oh,
in libraries.
Senator Schroeder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Anthony, yes. It's a two-pronged approach because from the perspective of an educator, I was thinking about that as I was sitting here a little bit. I've been an educator in a school. I taught a military science class at Mountain Home High School, and I also taught the first intro to philosophy class. But from the perspective of an educator who requires a wide array of materials and uses the resources in the library and is counting on using a piece of work. And as we all know, I think every single one of us has been exposed to a challenge of materials way in the past, long before this current controversy. that there needs to be a fair way to evaluate whether or not that material is useful in the classroom or isn't. And if it's the local people, this allows the people in that local community to make the decision about whether these materials are appropriate or not. But it allows, rather than summary or conclusory decisions, yes it is, no it isn't, it has a process that's available to the public and open to the public to see how these materials are evaluated, and the ultimate decision is rendered. But the goal is to avoid the availability of pornography without improperly denying access to materials that are useful in the educational setting.
Senator Anthony?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we introduce RS 30917.
Motion by Senator Anthony, second by Senator Burnt, that RS 30917 be sent to print. Discussion. Don't see any. Those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Okay, so that quick comment coming up in a second here. But again, that's how the process goes. That bill is on its way. I just want you to see how the committee process plays out and the type of questions and things that are going on. I will say, though, as a commentary on this bill, the creation of another board, the creation of a committee to review books, and if the school libraries and the schools don't comply with what's going on, then they just shut down the library completely. And the last part of the senator's comments there regarding wanting to have challenging materials available. I'm telling you, folks, the books that we've seen come up where they are sexually graphic details that are just it's pornography. It's like narration, narrative pornography, or graphic images. I don't understand. I don't understand the pushback on simply just tackling what the main issue is. Kids should not be accessing this graphic material. And if an adult allows that to happen, that adult should be met with repercussions. So shutting down an entire school library because the committee is still trying to figure out whether or not certain books are objectionable or not. It's like it's stringing things along, creating more bureaucracy, but that's what you expect from a bureaucracy in order. So anyway, let's move on here because I just want to get through some of this stuff. Where's my list? I had my list up here. Okay, so let's go to Julian Young here. Representative Julian Young submitted an RS at the beginning of session. She was one of the first RSs to be introduced, and what she was attempting to do was to replace the word fetus throughout Idaho code with the more descriptive term preborn child. And the bill was printed, and then she got a lot more feedback and saw some inconsistencies throughout code that caused her to say, well, let me go back to the committee with a new version of the bill to correct some of the things that are happening. So she got a second hearing on a new version of the bill. So she had to go through the process again. So we're going to play this clip. It's a little bit longer than the others. And the reason I want to show this to you is because she does get some questions from various different committee members, but also this is where the committee can do actual work, and they can, strike out lines, they can add things, they can adjust the bill right there on the fly. And if everybody agrees that that's the bill that works, then they can print it and it can move on to a public hearing. So a lot of things sometimes happen in offices, and during off hours, but a lot of times things can happen within the committee that allows the sponsor of the bill to have a formal public debate or discussion about the things that are happening, and then modify the bill to move forward. So that's why this one goes a little bit longer. But let's play this Representative Julian Young in front of the House State Affairs Committee, which is chaired by Representative Brent Crane, which I'll have a comment on how he runs committees as well. But let's fire that one up and see how she does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Representative Julianne Young. I represent District 30, And I bring to you today RS 30945. One of the beautiful things about this process is that there are so many eyes on everything, and that's why this process is so great. And when we drafted our previous RS addressing preborn children, it was drafted with an expectation that the definition of fetus throughout state statute would be consistent. And as we got more eyes on state statute, we discovered that there's actually a discrepancy. As I mentioned in the previous RS hearing, the term fetus, as it is used in state statute predominantly as defining from fertilization to birth, is not actually medically accurate. And at some point in time, a drafter recognized that, and they adjusted the definition of fetus to match the medical definition, but then knowing that they didn't actually intend to refer only to that developmental stage, they added a definition for embryo, and then in every place where they used the word fetus, they said embryo or fetus. So it still covers the same developmental span, but a different definition. And so rather than go forward with that discrepancy in place, we've cleaned that up. Other than that, this RS is largely the same as the one that the committee previously introduced. So with that, I would ask for your support for the introduction of RS 30945.
Thank you, Representative Young. Are there questions for Representative Young? Representative Gannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative Young, when I was looking through the House Bill 381, there are some references in there, or one, I think it's on page, 14, 15, 16-ish, references to deaths that are to fetal deaths or preborn child deaths. And I was just wondering, would the effect of this law, what would be the effect of this law on records, keeping records? Would there be any records or any kind of procedures that have to be followed in the case of deaths? Would changing these these definitions have any effect on that? And if so, what would that be?
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Gannon. I'm glad that you pointed to this section because it actually highlights one of the reasons that we need this bill. We've defined fetus in state statute as being from fertilization to birth, and then we have this whole section of code that talks about stillborn fetuses. Well, if it's already born, it can't fit within that definition of being from fertilization to birth. It's just contradictory, and so it's much more accurate to say stillborn child in that instance.
Mr. Chairman?
Certainly.
In drafting this and putting this together, did you become aware of whether there would be any legal changes in the way in which we operate now with relation to stillborn births, or I think there's also cremations and some other areas related to death?
Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Gannon. This legislation has been drafted to be policy neutral. Apples for apples in terms of definitions, so nothing should change in terms of on-the-ground enforcement.
Thank you.
You bet. Any further questions? Representative Crane, 12.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for a motion. I would move to introduce RS 30945 with the following change as approved by the bill sponsor. On page 22, line 47, what is stricken is fetal or skeletal. I would like to retain that original language of fetal or skeletal if that's approved by the bill sponsor.
Would you like to comment, Representative Young, on that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, maybe just to clarify in terms of the motion, the intent is to ensure that we retain the original language on that line.
Okay. Committee, we have a motion to introduce RS 30945, and on page 22, line 47, where the word fetal or skeletal is stricken, we will have those remain in. Is there discussion on that motion? Representative Barbieri.
Yeah, two things, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So that change we're talking about there, we're going to leave identifiable in there?
Representative Barbieri, my understanding, according to the motion is to introduce and leave where the word on line 47, fetal or skeletal, those three words are stricken. They would now remain, as well as the word identifiable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would request, Representative Young, that you give us a better, during the hearing, assuming we get this introduced, that we get a better idea of the embryo definition and how you incorporated that with respect to the rest of this. You brushed on that, but when we get to the hearing, I'd like to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Barbieri. And Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
with your indulgence, if I may, we would like to retain fetal or skeletal there, and so there's no need for identifiable.
Okay,
That was an attempt on the part of the drafter to make it make sense, but
Sure.
my intention was not to strike fetal as an adjective in that circumstance. So,
Did I hear the motion incorrectly then?
right, I believe we want to retain the original language as it was written before this draft, which would include not adding the word identifiable.
Okay, so the motion you would like to have that I heard incorrectly is to introduce RS 30945, and on line 47, the words that are stricken would be in place. However, the word that is underlined, identifiable, would be stricken. Is any questions on the committee? All right. The motion is to introduce RS 30945, and on page 22, line 47, the words fetal or skeletal will remain. The word identifiable will be stricken. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. That will be done. Committee, that will complete our work for today. We will stand adjourned.
Okay, real quick, Representative Brent Crane there is the chairman of the House State Affairs Committee, and I've watched a lot of committee hearings, and he runs the tightest ship. I mean, they start, they move, they motion, they end. Very, very succinct. I really appreciate that as somebody who watches the sausage being made, as they say. And if you're enjoying watching the sausage being made, stick around because we got more coming on. I'll react to this clip when we get back after this short break.
There's a saying in Idaho, Esto perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life and liberty. For honesty and integrity. We ride together.
Okay, welcome back. Today we are going through committee hearings. We are looking at some clips from various committee hearings throughout the past couple of weeks since the legislature has been in session. We have just watched Representative Julian Young reintroduce an RS regarding language and statute on fetus versus preborn child. And if you took note there of what was happening, like I said when we set it up, is that they are essentially helping to write the bill and correct certain things so that the committee can come to a consensus and vote on it and send it forward. So the bill that gets sent out will have those changes so that when public comment is ready to be taken up, it can happen with all the changes that were being made. So when public comment, for instance, that particular bill, when public comment comes up, the committee also reserves the right to listen to the comments, to take them into account when they're deciding what to do next with the bill. And so they will listen to public comment, maybe they'll make some more changes, and then take action from there. When it does come to public comment, we did have a very lively public comment session during the presentation of House Bill 384, which is the library bill that was presented by Representative Brent Crane in the House State Affairs Committee. So we've got a couple of clips that we wanted to share regarding the public comment on that. And the first one was from a library trustee in Eagle, who also happens to be Brian Allman. They're the same person. Brian Allman has been on the show a couple of times already. He's with the Gem State Chronicle, but he also is a library trustee. So he was there to give public comment at the hearing. Public comment it was limited to 2 minutes, and Representative Brent Crane would invite you up to speak. You give your comment and then move on. Or if members of the committee had a question for the commenter, they can stick around and ask those questions. So this first clip here, Brian Allman, let's listen to what he had to say on the library bill.
The committee, my name is Brian Allman. I live in Eagle. I am a member of the Eagle Library Board of Trustees. However, I'm not here representing them, but that does inform my opinion. I am speaking for myself. I believe that this is a good, solid bill that addresses a growing problem in our state. 50 years ago, your predecessors in the Idaho legislature, they defined in excruciating detail what kind of images and ideas that they consider to be harmful to minors. And that definition remains in statute today. It governs what children can have access to at bookstores, at convenience stores, anywhere but schools and libraries. Your predecessors worried that the definition would be used against certain educational materials, and so they carved out an affirmative defense for school and library personnel. And while this surely made sense at the time, I think things are a bit different now. Ideas and images that were once confined to seedy, adults-only bookstores are now being published and promoted directly to children. Several of the materials that have been found in the children's sections or the teens sections of schools and libraries fall clearly under the definition of what materials that are harmful to children in the Idaho Code. We're not talking about Huckleberry Finn. We're not talking about To Kill a Mockingbird. We're not talking about the Bible, as some have suggested. We're talking really about a few dozen books, many of which are graphic novels in both senses of the word, that include extremely vulgar and pornographic imagery. I don't believe this is a First Amendment issue. This is no more about banning books than restricting cigarettes and alcohol to minors is about banning cigarettes and alcohol. And this is simply about saying that some books are just not for children. My own library board, we are meeting later this month. We are going to look at our collection development policy, and I would like to see guidance from the legislature on this matter. I believe this bill provides a good foundation, a basic definition of what the state of Idaho has decided should not be made easily available to children, and any marginal issues beyond those basic, obvious cases can be handled at the local level. And I therefore urge the committee to send this to the floor with a due pass recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Are there questions for Brian today? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Marianne Cochran, Nina Beasley.
Okay, great. Well, kudos to Brian for coming in right under the 2-minute mark there. But again, fantastic comments from Brian. We appreciate him showing up, and that's what it's all about. Showing up, giving your voice, letting the committee hear your thoughts. You heard Brent Crane there also mention that Mariana Cochran was going to come up to speak, and we have that clip for you as well, which also includes some exchanges with the committee. So I want to make sure we get to that. Mariana Cochran too has also been a guest on this program discussing this very bill. She is the head of Clean Books for Kids, which is an advocacy group that is trying to help steer the course in terms of removing the ability for these materials to fall into the hands of children. So let's load up Mariana Cochran here and listen to her public comment as well as some back and forth that she may have.
From District 3, representing myself. Thank you, Chairman Crane and committee. Does this teen book look like it's appropriate fare for minors? But we don't judge books by their covers, although kids do select books based on their covers. Instead, here's just a fraction of a sliver that I could carry in today from North Idaho, all from my local branch library in the minor section, filled with sexually explicit descriptions. Every flag represents one. That's just what I could carry. At North Idaho Library Board meetings, we had testimonials from a former career probation officer who asserted that his sex crime convicts told him they were often initially influenced by explicit books and movies. His quote, "This information is a tool for recruiting vicious child molesters." We also heard testimony from a convicted pedophile turned addiction counselor who bravely shared that his addiction started at 9 years old with written stories and that 99% of his clients were exposed to obscenity as kids. With seemingly daily reports of pedophilia now part of mainstream news, an ever-growing adolescent mental health crisis, increasing adolescent suicide rates, and explosive rates of porn addiction, it's undeniable that there's a correlation with the confusing and denigrating influences from the hypersexualization of minors. These books are just one of many sources, I grant you, but each of you can do something about this influence. The opposition to this and previous similar bills screech, but personal choice, censorship, book banning. This bill, however, is not that, because they are conveniently ignoring that SCOTUS has already ruled to allow libraries to prevent obscenity for minors and to prevent minors from obtaining access to material that is harmful to them. This bill is no small thing, with hundreds of Idaho public libraries housing millions of books, influencing hundreds of thousands of kids. You can make a huge difference for them. Please do the right thing. Please stop this degrading and destructive cycle for kids. Please advance this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Are there questions for Representative Gannon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Cochran, first, which specific library did you get these books from? And second, has there been any move to replace library trustees at an election, or if it's schools, replace school board trustees at an election?
Mariana?
Chairman Crane and committee, thank you for that question, Representative. So I'm from Rathdrum. All of these are from my Rathdrum library, and they're all came from the young adult section. This book was in the young adult section until the community was outraged and our library did move it after much hubbub. So that your second question was, yes, where I live, our library board is elected, and we did have an election last year, and the two incumbents were replaced. However, in Coeur d'Alene, 15 miles from me, their library board is appointed. So, and the state has a combination for cities versus rural community libraries. Did that answer your question?
Brief follow?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Cochran. Pretty much, so you replaced the two library board members, and did they implement a policy to your liking, to your satisfaction?
As Chairman Otteson described, Board Chairman Otteson, I am where she is. And the Board of Trustees has been working on this for almost a year. Oh. And so they have been stymied. The process is slow and painful. There is opposition within the library. You've heard similar testimony of what we're hearing up there.
Follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Cochran. I'm just thinking, though, that if they control the board makes the decision, not the librarians. So what's stopping the board? Is there some law that is preventing the board from doing that? Or why can't the board act and implement the ideas that you're espousing today?
Chairman Crane, Representative Gannon. So the board sets the policy. They do not select books, right? The library staff selects the book. Where I live, we have 7 libraries plus a bookmobile, so it's a consortium of libraries. There's a staff who does that collection development. Supposedly in accordance with the policy. Right now, the policy has allowed all of this stuff. So the attempts to revise the policy are at play, but they are not succeeding so far.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here today.
I have excerpts from all the books that I read. Would you like to have them?
All right, fascinating.
Representative Folksclaw.
Yeah, she's giving them examples of the books. Fascinating exchange back and forth. As you can see, they have to talk through the chairman to each other, so they can't just have a one-on-one back and forth conversation, but it keeps everything civil. That being said, fascinating exchange. I think Ms. Cochran is doing great work, and I think she's explaining the issues that are happening down at the local level. It seems as though that perhaps Representative Gannon was trying to move the conversation to say, well, if we want to make sure that they have local control, so if the board, if the people of the community elect representatives that will advance the ideas and the will of the people in that area, then maybe we should be allowing that in areas that, say, I don't know, where a community-focused folks are wanting to have pornography in front of children. I mean, I guess that's the argument that they're going to be making. I don't know. I'm not trying to make the argument. I'm just trying to listen just like you and trying to figure out what's going on. So, okay, great. That was the two public commenters. I wanted to replay a clip we showed a few days ago. Representative Julian Young sits on the House State Affairs Committee. And when there was, like I said, there was lots of testimony going on within that library bill hearing. And so when a librarian or a representative from a library's community somewhere in the state was offering her perspective in objection to the bill, Representative Young started to ask the folks who were objecting to the bill one particular question. And so let's play that quick clip real fast.
Curious to know, do you believe that graphic sexual content is harmful to minors?
Mary?
Boy, that's a tough one because I'm not sure who's defining graphic sexual content. So I'm not sure I'd be able to answer that clearly for you.
I'm going to ask the same question again that I asked earlier. Do you believe that graphic sexual content is harmful to minors?
Mr. Prescott?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions?
Okay. You can see there two different answers from folks who were in opposition to the bill. I always find it fascinating when somebody can't quite put their finger on it and agree that graphic sexual material, whatever it may mean to you, is not should not be in front of children. It's this moral relativism that I think is seriously harming our society when we make excuses for, well, this group of people prefer this when we're talking about something that's extremely important. We're not talking about whether you like a Snickers bar over an apple. That's all I'm going to say about that. All right. We are going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to do a little bit more of the sausage making aspect when it comes to the budget. The Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee has been meeting, and they are the ones that figure out how to spend all of the tax money that you're sending them. So we'll be right back.
All Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? Because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho Pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those two founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
4 requested line items. The first is for $136,500 for 2 new staff at the Idaho Penitentiary. The entire request is from dedicated funds. This would be a self-supported request, meaning as long as visitors continue to go to the Idaho Penitentiary, these positions can be filled. The administrative support manager. This is $101,000 with 70% from the general fund, 30% from federal funds. And this is to address the administration and oversight of this agency. In the past decade, the budget has grown for the Historical Society. The cost to renovate and the cost to sustain our history has gone up. On top of the Office of Information Technology consolidation on top of the human resource consolidation and others. It's just requiring more work for their staff. And as a result, they're asking for someone to sustain and help assist between accounts payable, accounts receivable, as other oversight. They are $37,000 for OIT's consolidation. And finally, the $1 million for the America 250 commemoration, which is the governor is recommending an additional $650,000 for a total of $1.65 million. This is one-time money with the expectation that if approved, there'd be reappropriation moving forward. America 250. Go. This includes partnerships with the Department of Education, the Department of Commerce, Commission on Arts, the libraries, Parks and Recreation, and Idaho Public Television. This includes $600,000 for grants of $25,000 each for projects that enhance Idaho history, literacy, culture, civic engagements, $160,000 for a website to market the project, $60,000 to create and publish a book called Idaho Places, which would be about rural, historic Idaho places, scenic byways, state parks, $60,000 to produce a show that would complement the book, $60,000 to produce an Idaho series on school-age children, for school-age children and an oral history initiative. Every state right now is being asked the same thing. They've either approved or are being asked to approve something comparable. This is Idaho's attempt to say, here's why Idaho is so great. Here's why Idaho and what Idaho has done to build into America for the past 250 years. The additional $650,000 is to develop and integrate American civics education workshops and courses. I probably did not do the line item justice, but the good news is we have the director here who I know knows way more about this. And with that, I'm happy to conclude my remarks and turn the time over.
Okay, so that was Jared Tatro, hopefully I'm saying his name right, from the Idaho State Historical Society, going through their budget request for their division, for their department. And this happens every year. Every year they have to ask the JFAC, the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee, and the things that they had in order for their department to operate. So he was there going through the budget, and we thought it was interesting to show that clip specifically because Idaho is apparently getting ready for the America 250 celebration, which is America's 250th birthday, which happens in 2026. So they're a couple of years out, but they're getting ready for it. And so anyway, so that aside, you can hear some of the reasons why they were asking for the money. And all this is happening inside a committee hearing room with House members and Senate members who all get together to work on the budget. So again, a lot of the sausage making that happens, it happens in public view, and it's aired on the Idaho Public Television. You can go to the legislative website and find the TV button there and watch these committees, look at the agenda, figure out which rooms they're happening in, and then go there and watch it live yourself, or go back in the archives and download and watch them there. So I want to show this next clip because it kind of gives you a little bit of more of an insight into how the questioning may happen when it comes to talking to some of the heads of these departments. So this is going to be a clip of Representative Wendy Horman, I believe, who will be questioning one of the directors, or the executive, actually she's the executive director, Janet Gallimore of the Idaho State Historical Society. So let's throw that clip up there and go through this.
Co-Chair Horman.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Welcome. It's so good to have you here today. I reviewed the detail that you've provided on the American 250 that's on our website. If you want more detail on that, there's some excellent thoughts and the organizational structure of it and the effort. My question is around the money you received recently from the Permanent Building Fund on, excuse me, the storage facility. And I know we'll see a request in a different budget, but could you just give us an update on the progress?
Thank you. Director.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Horman, yes. In this fiscal year, the agency received $15 million to the Permanent Building Fund to put an addition onto the Idaho State Archives building. I think that some of you have toured both the storage facility that we need to move and know where the State Archives building is. So that will add 50,000 feet storage at 3 levels, we're expecting. Very basic structure, but very good in terms of environmental controls and environmental quality. That project is out to bid, and I know that they're in the process of architect selection right now. I think that they are expecting to do interviews this month and then do a contract late January, early February.
Thank you for that response.
Okay, so again, more sausage making. She's there to answer questions and so forth. But I think it's important to realize that these things are being held out in the open. And so when these budgets get before committee, we all have the opportunity to bring in our voices and listen and figure out, is it okay for Idaho to be spending millions of dollars doing X? There's a lot going on. I'm not expecting you to watch every single committee or pick every single issue to pay attention to. But if you're a numbers guy and like to get into the budgets, that's how you do it. If you're more onto the social issues, then you can hang out in some of the other committees and pay attention there. So I commend you for sticking through this as we went through these clips, and hopefully for those that have not known the process or seen the process or had the opportunity to have it condensed in this way, that you did get something out of it. So tomorrow's show will not be on the air. We are thrilled to have made it to our 10th episode here, and I think having the ability to learn and hear feedback from the audience and work out some of our kinks. We are going to, the staff here, the guys and whatnot, we're going to take tomorrow off from broadcasting, go through some stuff, enhance some things, get our schedule set for next week. I know we're going to have Senator Scott Herndon on. We'll have the president of the body on. And so we'll have a full lineup of guests next week, and we'll get right back to it. So we're taking tomorrow off. Make sure you hit up our Rumble channel to watch some of the archives. We're obviously broadcasting live on X, on YouTube, Facebook, and in our Telegram chat. IdahoSignal.com. If you'd like to support us, please head over there. Any type of support will be great, but more importantly, sharing the content, sharing the videos, and commenting on them and keeping the dialogue going can be the most effective way to have some change. So thank you again for tuning in. We shall see you next week.
This bill, I think, it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.